Welcome to the Land Your Bet Sports Betting Show. Thursday night football. Got a good matchup here between the Bills and the Dolphins in Miami. Going to be taking you through that game. Got about 5 to 6 key bits of info that you're going to want to look at here before making any more bets than you've already made, as I'm sure you've made plenty. Then I'm going to take you through outlier.bet, share my screen with you guys, and find some player props that we've got in there. Some of the ones that I've already thrown in the Discord, by the way. Link is in the description of the video for that Discord. It is free, so jump in there if you are interested in catching all this stuff at the best number. I will also say, up until now, all the content has been free. Everything, including all the picks and the write-ups. Moving forward, the Discord will remain free as a whole. But if you do want those picks and plays, all of them at the time that I'm playing them, and the write-ups, I'm going to be partnering with WAP.com. So that's going live this Friday. You can already jump in there if you want as well, but that's going live this Friday. And that is something I want to let you guys know, because if you do jump into the free Discord before September is up, you get 50% off for the first 3 months of any package that you might want to go ahead and purchase at WAP.com. So appreciate all the support. Let's go ahead and jump right into Thursday night football. Quick look at the record. Flying solo week 1. I did not actually get a video out. Was pretty much dying from the flu, so couldn't get that out, but did get a number of picks in. And this is how we did: 6-2 up 375 units there, and 5-2 on the player prop. So that was the bulk of it. Got a nice little Bijan ladder in there and a bunch of receptions props as well. Those are kind of what I like to go to a lot of times. I feel like targets are a really good indication of volume, so that's a really sturdy stat that I can feel confident with. But either way, I will be bringing you a show on Friday as well. All this stuff is on the bottom line, but on Friday there will be a show with Dieter Kurtenbach, who is a wonderful NFL analyst and covers the 49ers, really good sports bettor as well. So he'll be joining me every Friday, and I'll be getting those videos out to you guys as we go through our best bets and a couple other things in there. But let's jump right into Thursday night football. The Bills are in Miami visiting those Dolphins. Both teams 1-0. Not too much to look at here. They both failed to cover as home favorites as well in their games, but they did pull out comeback victories as they were both losing at the half. So they're both bringing some momentum in here. Josh Allen did injure his non-throwing hand wrist, so that's something to keep an eye out for, but looks like he's a full participant in practice and will be a full go on Thursday. What limitations he has, I'm not totally sure, but we'll take a look at that stuff here. You can see the Dolphins are favored at home, 2.5 points. So basically a pick 'em, just given the 3-point edge to the home team, as they usually do here in the NFL. Dolphins at -2.5, -135 on the money line. And you can get an over 48.5 if you want that number. And you can get an under at 49, as those are available on multiple different books. Let's start with some key info for the Bills that I'm using in this game here as I make some bets. 11-1 straight up against this team in the last 12 meetings. Not the same team, and they're in Miami. So I'm just throwing that out there because the Bills have dominated this regular season matchup. But it is important to note that they've taken a little bit of a step back on defense. Matt Milano is not in this game. That's one on here as well. He is wildly important. Talk about that in a second. But they are only 6-5-1 against the spread in those 12 games. So not like they've dominated, pretty much even there when it comes to against the spread numbers. But in the last 2 seasons, really interesting here, in the month of September, both of these teams are 1-2 in terms of offensive EPA, expected points added on any given play that they're on. And that's pretty interesting because the Dolphins are 7-1. We'll talk about that, but Bills not quite the same record in September, but have been the best offense over the last 2 seasons in the first month of the season. Like I said, middle linebacker Matt Milano is out. That is huge. So if you want to talk about why, the middle of the field, he just covers it incredibly well. And to the tune of some pretty incredible numbers. 7 touchdowns that this Bills team has given up, did give up last season when Matt Milano was not on the field. And that's through the middle of the field. They had no interceptions in those situations. When Matt Milano is on the field, no touchdowns allowed through the middle third of the field inside the seams, and 5 interceptions that they got in those situations. So one of the best coverage linebackers in the league, but hasn't really been able to stay healthy that much over the last couple seasons and will be out for this one. Huge loss for that defense. But I will say, looking at the wide receiver stuff here for Buffalo, 10 players recorded a reception in week 1. I don't know if it's going to get any easier to predict who's going to get the bulk of the targets for this team. We saw Dalton Kincaid get 2, right? As people were expecting big things from him. Dawson Knox still sort of eating into his stats, essentially. So we'll see what happens with the wide receiver stuff. I'll take a look at that on outlier.bet, though. Probably should have started with this, but the weather is calling for a bunch of rain and a bunch of wind. And that's going to put a little bit of a break in terms of what do I want to bet on, right? I need to like come to a halt for a minute, see what's actually going to happen with that weather, because it will affect so much of the game theory and the game flow, how this thing goes. So I was mentioning that the Dolphins have been an incredible team in the month of September, 7-1 in the last 2 seasons, second best EPA after that Bills squad. And the game plan for the Dolphins in this game, and pretty much every game, get the ball out fast. The offensive line is not good in front of Tua. So he actually got the ball out at the rate of 2.3 seconds per play in the last game here, and I expect that to continue against the Bills front seven. Now, it's not the same Bills front seven that it's been in terms of being able to get pressure on the quarterback, but this Dolphins offensive line is bad enough. It looks like is bad enough that they should have trouble protecting Tua if he doesn't get the ball out really quickly. Weirdly, they still had the 7th slowest pace last season in 23 in terms of how much of the play clock that they used. They're tied with the Bills. So both these teams play really slowly. I really want to look at the total of this game at 48.5, leaning towards the over. Look at that on Outlier with you guys in 1 second, but that's really not something I can rely on right now with the weather. And I don't like the pace of play that both these teams show, even though they've gone over a ton as of late. And just some injuries that are key here for the Dolphins. Mostert is out. Achane is questionable, and that's pretty important because if Achane doesn't play, Jeff Wilson's going to get a ton of usage. We've already seen his props nuked. But let's go ahead and use outlier.bet here. I'm going to share my screen with you guys and get into some of these player props that we're looking at. All right, so we are on outlier.bet here, and the first thing that I do want to look at is the total of this game, like I was telling you guys. So you can go over here on the left side to games and get that up so that you can get the game lines and all that type of team plays rather than individual player props, obviously, right? So we can see here the total of this game right here. It says 49.5. I can actually tell you it's recently been updated to 48.5. And that's a pretty key number, obviously, in football here, once you get to about like 28, 29 or 28, 21, right? A couple of the key numbers that you get in football. But some of the insights that are pretty interesting as well and helpful. The one that I was looking at here was that the Dolphins are going under a lot against really good scoring defenses. That's what the Bills have been. I don't know if we consider them that anymore. Either way, what's really important about these two teams, they've scored a ton of points against each other. Last season or in the last 2 seasons rather, over in 3 of 4, and in the last 5 games overall, 60 points has been scored 3 separate times. So they've been going over a lot. I also have a little Thursday night football trend that I was looking at, which is last season 13-6 to the over on Thursday night football, which is a little bit of the opposite of what we normally think about when we think about Thursday night football. We think of ugly, slow, choppy games with bad teams. Maybe Amazon Prime coming in and getting those games on their channels has increased the amount of money that they're willing to spend, and that they've given better teams and matchups because of better ratings on Amazon Prime. Not really sure, but there was a lot more points scored last season, including the 3 Thanksgiving games that we saw, which had a bunch of overs on that day as well. So that was a couple of things that really kind of led me to go there towards the over here of 48.5. But once again, the reason I haven't pulled the trigger on that bet is because if there really is going to be a ton of rain and a ton of wind, it's not the moment in time that I really want to be betting on an over when you're looking at needing to run, not being able to throw nearly as effectively. That stuff all needs to be taken into account. So Miami's weird. It could be, you know, a thunderstorm and like hailing winds at like 1 p.m. and then by 4 p.m. it's like perfect weather and everything's dry because the sun is so hot. So not really sure how it's going to look yet. The forecast is calling for spotted showers and some heavy winds, so that's really important here for the total, but I am staying away from that. Let's move over to some player props, and I'm just going to look at a couple of things that I really am planning on betting. The first one here that I want to look at is James Cook, because we hit a nice bet with him last week, over 13.5 on his rushing attempts, right? And that was in part because I was looking at the splits between head offensive coordinator Joe Brady and when he took over once Kent Dorsey was out last season. Kent Dorsey really ran a pass-heavy offense, a lot more pass to plays. It was like 33-26. Then Joe Brady takes over. He flips that so that it's a much more run-heavy offense, and a lot of that is Josh Allen doing the running, right? But if we look at James Cook, this went up from 13.5, I believe. Let's find his rushing attempts right here at 14.5. That went up from 13.5 last week for Cook. So I still really am interested in this number. The thing is he actually went under last season. If you look at the head-to-head against Miami, 13 and 12 in those 2 games against Miami last season. One of them was with Dorsey, that was the 12. But with with Brady as the offensive coordinator, it was still 13 rushing attempts for him, which I didn't love to see against this Miami team. There's some thought process that like they need to throw to keep up with them, and then it's better to get his receiving. But I'm still thinking about pulling the trigger on the over 14.5. I will make sure that that's in the Discord in time tomorrow for everybody. But it's something that I just haven't pulled the trigger on yet because, once again, the weather. If the weather is bad, this is a slam awesome play. If the weather is really good and both teams are throwing the ball down the field, especially Miami, then that makes me a little bit nervous because I do think that there's going to be a lot of stuff open, especially in the middle of the field for Miami's offense, which would force a negative game script on Buffalo. And that's something that I was talking about with the homie Trey in the Discord as well. We both do think Miami's in a good position to win and is the team that you should be betting on if you're betting a side in this game, with the way Josh Allen's injured, with the way they just looked a little bit better on defense. And one thing that's interesting about this Miami rush defense is that it gave up a ton of yards last week, 128 yards that they gave up to ETN and to Tank Bigsby combined on the Jags, right? That is a little bit skewed though, because their the yards, they allowed 4.9 yards per carry. But if you look at their rush EPA, the rush expected points added on each rush, that the likelihood that you score almost essentially, it was a third best in the amongst teams in week 1, right? It was like minus 0.4. Points expected that would be added on the rushing play. So it was like they got away on a bunch of them, and ETN probably should have had a rushing touchdown after he fumbled in the end through the end zone. But the key here is that like those more in-depth metrics indicate that they were doing a pretty good job at stopping the run. They were 15th in defensive rush DVOA last year. So a lot of interesting stuff. But like the James Cook thing here, I'm holding off on the rushing attempts until I do know a little bit more about the weather. But if you do see the weather get turned really bad, 14.5 might be a good number. Once it turns really good, though, if there's a negative game script, all right, we're over that. So I've stayed away from the Cook bet for right now. The next one that I wanted to show you guys and take a look at was Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir, because those dudes are doing basically the same thing. But what's really interesting, and I'm just going to bring up Samuel, because he is making, what's he make? He's like, it was an $80 million contract. So he's making a bunch of money, and he had 2 targets last week. So I'm looking at receptions right now for him. But if you go down to things like receptions and targets last week, and I think I'm on 2020. I'm on last 10. I just care about 24 right now. So last week he had two receptions on 2 targets, and that was 8% of the target share, meaning there was 25 passing plays and he only saw 2 targets amongst those plays. Not a good number, right? And there weren't that many passing plays because they ran a lot of Josh Allen, and James Cook ended up getting a bunch of rushes, 19 of them last week, because they had time of possession, a ton of time of possession. We'll see if that's the case this week, if they do try to slow it down a little bit. But once again, weather is heavily dependent for me before I make a bet on that type of stuff. But Shakir was much more involved than Samuel. You saw the 2 targets and 2 receptions for him. Shakir, and I'll show you a couple of things that are actually outside of just, wait, I forgot about Shakir in here. Bring him up. So if I get Khalil up here, looking at his receptions. So he's at 3.5. You get that for plus money. Last week, he didn't even see enough targets, right? Let's go back to 2024. Go down. We see he had 3 targets and 3 receptions. So not enough. Again, I would expect that they're going to have to be throwing down in this game. And so that will mean that it's a lot more likely that he sees a few more targets. But 10 players on this team saw a target or a reception in the first game of the season, right? First from Josh Allen. So it's still a little bit up in the air for me. Who's going to do what as far as the receivers are concerned? I'm staying away from receiver props on the Bills as of right now. All right, let's close it out with a bet that I do have. We're looking at Josh Allen now that I bring up here on the on outlier.bet. By the way, we'll just quick plug that, like, if you do want a free 7-day trial to outlier.bet so you can use all of this stuff, the link in the description of the video that is special for me, obviously in partnership with them. So grab that, get 7 free days, see if it helps you as much as it's helping me, because it's, I mean, I'm only showing you like a fraction of it right now because I want to get through this game and show you as much as I can. But like, you can look at all the versus the defensive rankings. The insights are always helpful. And there's a lot more on here that I haven't even shown you yet. So keep that in mind if you want to test it out for yourself. Link in the description of the video. But let's close it out with Josh Allen, because what's really interesting about his passing touchdowns is he has scored or thrown for at least 2 touchdown passes in every game he's ever played against the Miami Dolphins. 12 career games in the regular season, and has gone over that number in all of them. You can see that includes obviously last season, and this only goes back to 23. But I assure you, use a great site such as StatMuse, and you can literally just go Josh Allen career stats versus Dolphins. You don't even have to type in that much, but if you look at his TDs, he has not thrown for less than 2 of them. He has rushed for a number of them as well. So that's a really interesting number. The other really interesting thing that I found with Josh Allen was Josh Allen career stats on Thursday Night Football. This is a pretty nice hit rate as well. If you look at his TDs thrown, he is 5 of 6, getting at least 2 touchdowns. We are getting a really good number here for him to get 2 touchdown passes. That is plus 105. Those are both really solid numbers. There's a couple other things working in our favor as far as that goes. If you look at the difference between the books, that is just in and of itself something. And this is another great aspect of this tool here, right? If you look at the discrepancy, and this is a little bit more for the rushing touchdowns, which I want to show you too, but plus 105, minus 115, that's a really solid amount of money right there. It's about 30 cents, right? Am I doing that math right? No, 5 to 5. Yeah, 20 cents, whatever. It's a good amount of money. So if you want to get that number in on DraftKings, even Bet365 is even money. Those are some really good odds differences between those 2 books. And then I will also say the rushing touchdown as well, especially because of the fact that they're just giving it to him on the goal line. He had 5 rushing attempts inside the red zone last game, which is probably frustrating James Cook fantasy owners. Let me just go to TDs. There we go. That's the first one. And so I can understand why that'd be frustrating you guys, but head to head, it didn't have one in this last game. It was 21-14 in this game. So it was a lot slower. Last game of the season. This is not that, right? This is them still really playing for now the lead of the division alongside the Patriots as well, which is really interesting. So that this game matters, right? And obviously the Jets, they're 0-1, but either way for Josh Allen, that is a play that I have for him. I'm taking him to get his 2 passing TDs with half a unit. And I'm also throwing a half a unit on the plus 105 rushing TD. And if you combine those on DraftKings, you get plus 276, also worth quarter unit for me as well. Those plays are all in the Discord, like I mentioned, so make sure you do check those out. And that is all the time that I have for you guys in this one. Definitely make sure to check out outlier.bet in the link in the description of the video, so you can check that out and get that 7-day free trial. See if you like it and use it for yourselves. Don't forget, Friday, we are going to have that show with Dieter. Best bets. Got stinky bet of the day as well. What is the public betting and should we fade that? That's going to be one of our segments in there as well. Dieter's going to throw some college football bets our way for Saturday. So really looking forward to his college football stuff. He's really, really good at college football betting. I'll say that he writes a ton of different pre-game or preseason articles for a bunch of different things, but really good stuff there. So check those out on Friday. Till I see you next, though, happy betting.